Welcome to my channel, Filippa and Healing, where I share reflections and methods that I come across for healing pelvic floor dysfunction. In this video, I will go into the details about prolapse diagnosis. So I will cover how do the healthcare system actually come to the conclusion of what diagnosis do you have. Also the purpose of a diagnosis. And then I will give you some tips on how you can actually self-diagnose the prolapse symptoms that you are experiencing and the purpose of self-diagnosis. Okay, so let's start with how do the healthcare system or a doctor or physio actually give you a diagnosis. Most commonly is that you go to their practice and in their room you will lay down in some kind of chair or bench where you have to spread your legs, and they will firstly look at you and then probably feel with their fingers and also with the speculum, which is like a small tool that you can use to open up the vagina and have a look inside. And doing this type of diagnosis is, in my opinion, actually mad. It is crazy. Because when you are experiencing prolapse symptoms, gravity will affect the tissues in the vagina a lot. So if you are standing up, of course, gravity will have a different pull on the tissue compared to when you are laying down. So if you have been diagnosed in this way, I would encourage you to forget that diagnosis, because it's not a proper way to diagnose anyone with prolapse symptoms. I have heard about women who have actually been examined in a standing position, and most commonly in combination with the laying down, but then they have also been standing up and the doctor or physio have been looking at them in a standing up position, which probably is better. The only thing is that from talking with thousands of women regarding prolapse experience, most women experience a change in the position of a prolapse from week to week, sometimes from day to day, sometimes from hour to hour. So this is also like, even if they do examine you in a standing position, it might be a completely different diagnosis the day after or a few hours later. So actually, if you have had a diagnosis like this, I would recommend you to forget about that too. And this leads us into the purpose of a diagnosis. So from the healthcare perspective, my guess is that they love diagnosing, because it boxes something in and you can sort of take control of it. And that's why, the number of diagnoses are increasing in any area of the healthcare system a lot. Probably because we are quite unhealthy these days all over the world, but also because, I don't know why, but we have this need, like the healthcare system really has a need to give away diagnosis. Of course, because then you can treat it. Like otherwise you can't treat. If you wouldn't have a diagnosis, you can't treat it. I understand that the intention of setting a diagnosis is very good. Of course, it is good. Like the healthcare system is supposed to be there for human beings to feel better. Unfortunately, my experience when talking to women, and also my own experience, is that a diagnosis is really a mindfuck. And most commonly I hear two stories. So one is that a woman comes to be examined and she gets a diagnosis and it's a lot worse than what she is experiencing. So she gets super sad and, depressed and just feeling that surgery might be her only option, or maybe trying a pessary, maybe trying Kegels, but her condition is so bad. So she just feels awful. And these three options that the healthcare system gives, Kegel's, surgery, or pessary, isn't really uplifting either. It's like you're never going to be whole again. The other option is women who actually feel quite a lot of their symptoms, and then they come to be examined and get the diagnosis, and it's actually like a grade 1, which is nothing. And that's also very frustrating because you are experiencing that something is really bad and the diagnosis you get doesn't show that at all. So the emotional experience doesn't really count here. And if you want to help someone and treat someone, probably the one with the more bad experience of things and is really affected in their daily lives, they need that treatment. So it's kind of like, it's a mindfuck, I would say, either way. I have never heard a woman who said, I got my diagnosis, it all made sense, I felt that positioning, like that grade, even if it was 1, 2, 3, or 4 of the prolapse, I felt that was positioned there at all times and no changes. That has never happened. So from my perspective, I think that the healthcare system knows very little about women's bodies. And I also just want to mention here that the stage of the prolapse might change due to many different factors. One is that most women are still, in their cycle, and there will be hormonal changes every day of their cycle. And the tissues are very closely connected to the hormones in the body. So what hormonal state you are in, and if you have hormonal imbalances, that will also affect the pelvic floor. It can also be due to sleep, what you are eating, any food allergies or sensitivities that you might not be aware of, what you are drinking, and if you're hydrating enough, your emotional state, if you are feeling stressed. So many things will affect the position of the prolapse. So here is more of my perspective of this whole situation. To really get to know your body and empower yourself through the experience of symptoms such as a prolapse, I would really encourage you to take ownership of the situation, not feeling disconnected from your vagina or pelvic floor, feeling like, oh, I don't want to see, I don't want to touch, I don't want to, this is not even a part of my body. I will go to this person and they will tell me what to do. They will tell me what grade, they will tell me everything. Or I also know women who they are obsessed with examining themselves, so they do it every day, and that might be good for a few reasons. So if you examine yourself for a few days or weeks in a row, you will feel that the prolapse is positioned in different places inside or outside the vagina, so that in that sense you can compare. Although I think it's super important not to be obsessed. I have also been obsessed, and I think, it's on a healing journey, it's so much more important to let go and really just listen into your symptoms, because the symptoms are there to show us the way. And it doesn't really matter what our mind is thinking and what grade we have and all these words that the mind wants to put on everything. So it's, from my perspective, better to just let go and experience the symptoms and also the signals from your body on what to do next and what your body actually feels good about doing. Having said all this, I would anyway really recommend, if you haven't done it yet, to try this to see if you can understand more about your symptoms and the situation in your vaginal canal and also in your pelvic floor. And that is something that also I have heard from many women. Not many doctors and physios actually can tell very well, and that is what kind of prolapse or prolapses that you are experiencing. And it's a really easy way to, for yourself, understand where there is heaviness or where the tissues are actually getting pulled down. And you just use your fingers, so make sure that you wash them and preferably cut your nails. And then you take them into your vagina in a standing position. And to know what kind of prolapse you have, you will pull with your finger in that direction. So for example, for a bladder prolapse, let's say this is your pubic bone. Here is the bladder. This is where the bladder usually are, like in normal cases, are positioned. Then you would take your fingers into your vagina, and if you can put something like this, if you can feel, you put something there and it kind of stays. It doesn't necessarily have to stay, but you feel like the opening is getting more open by doing this. You have some kind of bladder prolapse. Same thing with the rectal, you just go like that way, and same thing with the uterus. See if you can take it up, and usually from what I've heard, I don't know, this is also like, I don't know what kind of scientific facts are behind this, but from what I've understood, it's normal that the uterus, if it's positioned 2 knuckles of your finger into the vagina, that's normal. Like that would not count as a prolapse. I'm not sure, if that works for everybody. Everybody's body will be very different. Like we have all different faces. We will have completely different vaginas. You can't say what's right for one is also right for another one. So it's very complex to think about all this, I think. But this is my tip, and you could do this if you feel balanced and not obsessed. You can try this for like a week or maybe a couple of weeks or throughout your cycle to understand where are the tissues positioned in different days of your cycle. Or you just do it once and you will kind of know what kind of prolapses that you are experiencing, and maybe you already know the worst one. It's super clear to you what is bothering you the most, and maybe you don't want to know, and that's also fine. But I think there is something to like taking ownership in this way of your body and actually start to try and understand what is the situation down there and how can I best support it. Like when you are doing any kind of visualizations or affirmations, if you can bring in the whole picture and visualize how you heal it, for example, then it's good to know what, like on a detailed level, how do you want this to change into the healthier vision that you have in front of you. So as long as you can stay distanced a little bit and not being obsessed in doing this, I think it's a really good way. And if you have just found out that you have a prolapse, I would maybe not recommend you doing this. Just wait for some time, let everything, calm down, especially the nervous system. There's no stress about anything. We are just on this journey to actually explore, being curious on the body and the mind and ourselves, and see how we can support this healing journey. So that's kind of everything I have to say about this. I hope I made things a little more clear for you, and let me know in the comments below if you have any questions at all.